What you're looking at here is Return of the Slimepires. It's a free browser game in which you run and jump and shoot and slide and plot and puzzle your way through a series of challenges, contending with the presence of those aforementioned Slimepires, who have decided that now is the time for them to return. Purely as a pixel art game with a pleasantly tight control system and engaging challenges to solve in ways that make me feel clever, I think Return of the Slimepires is a great game, and its reward to time investment is balanced. So finally, Lisa Grant Ludwig is going to study it to make sure it's not part of some subsystem of the San Andreas fault. If you Google that one up, I think you'll find it's a pretty good joke. Anyway, good video game, free video game. You should check it out. But now I've done that due diligence, we're just going to talk about things about it that make my brain in particular itch, which is mostly about limitations, creativity, and boundaries. First of all, let's talk about limitations. This is the work of one Sophie Holden, who feels to me like a weirdly famous name in the spaces I'm in. Like, explaining to you who Sophie Holden is ridiculous, because if you know who I am, you've already passed by her comparatively much brighter lights on the way to get to see me. If you aren't familiar, you can go to sophieh.itch.io and see the stuff of hers she put out for free and for sale. Some of them are neat little things that run in browsers. There's a fascinating Steam game called Safe Cracking Simulator, which is a game where you crack safes using real safe cracking techniques. And my favorite thing, Sophie's Dice. It's a program for rolling dice. I use it for when I want to make a game video which shows me rolling dice on screen, which I have admittedly only done once, but I'm really happy with it. They have a very satisfying clack and weight to them, despite being literally weightless objects. Anyway, the whole of what her creative output looks like is kind of an idealized indie game developer. There's a lot of stuff where it's very clearly one person's personal interests coupled with a particular set of skills, similar to the work of other top developers in the space, like Christine Love's fascination with visual novels as communication interfaces, or Heather Flower's deep consideration of humans as meat engines, or Kitty Horrorshow's incredibly thorough consideration of spaces humans live in terms of the horror of existing. I can't give you the through line of Holden's work that I could see, necessarily, but seeing a collection like this is the sort of stuff that I delight in, and everything I've checked out seems very cool and interesting. Everything else aside, nothing here is boring. Now, none of this is a limitation. This is just introductory material to induce you to look at things too. Anyway, Return of the Slimepires looks the way it does and plays the way it does because it is a Pico 8 game. That is, a game on the Pico 8 engine. The Pico 8 is a console that doesn't exist, an entirely fictionalized thing which uses its restrictions of what the system can do to help unify its aesthetic within a particular set of boundaries. The promise of what the game offers is that you can make it do things with a programming language called Lua, about which I will tell you nothing, because it isn't relevant and I don't know anything about it. I know whatever it's doing, it's powerful, since Pico 8 jam games are often incredibly large for the small amount of time a game jam normally gets to get made, and how many times I've seen someone make a largely feature-complete simple game with a tagline of first time trying to make something in Pico 8. There are more than a few free Metroidvanias that were made in a weekend with this system. Now, it's not like you can't do a lot of impressive things with Pico 8. Pico 8 has, amongst other things, Poom, which is a Pico 8 level at a time version of Doom, and Undune 2, which is a point-and-click representation of the Dune 2 video games made in, again, the Pico 8 engine. One of the things about Pico 8 that's impressive is that it outputs as HTML5, which is to say you can open it in a browser. This makes these games instantly accessible, but it also means they can't take over your computer in the way other games can. They can store information about the state of things in your browser so you can play the game for a little bit, leave and then come back, and the web page will remember what you were doing, and it will be able to save to some extent what you were up to. But it isn't a game that can store an enormous amount of what you're doing and what you've done, meaning the games necessarily are simplified. The resolution is small, meaning that the fonts have to be legible in that space, and you need to make sentences short enough to be readable in the space you've got. Pico 8 promises that it is largely a simple game engine to get started with, and the fact it is simple and the games it produces, even the really complicated ones, are necessarily simplified. They look simpler, they can store less information, and therefore the games have limitations they have to work around for the kinds of games they can even be. You're not going to be able to store a game with lots of text like Umineko or Cuck Hunt or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You can get a game like Doom, but it's one level at a time, with fewer guns, simpler mechanisms, smaller maps. These boundaries remind me of the work of Roger von Oech. Von Oech wrote a book called A Whack on the Side of the Head, How You Can Be More Creative, which is a book I only discovered because Mark Rosewater, one of the Magic the Gathering developers, has referenced it multiple times. While talking about this book, Mark summarizes an idea within it as simply, restrictions breed creativity. A blank page has limitless potential. A blank page with the words, "the duck farted" on it, is a page with a restriction on it, and you have to find a way around it. In the book, von Oech offers examples of objects with problems, like a chair with a post in the middle of the seat, and asks the question, how do you design including this? How do you make this chair work? What can you do to address the problem? These are questions offered without answers too. Von Oech is here to get you thinking, not to play with you with riddles, where, haha, you fool, here's the clever answer I worked out before I gave you the question. In Return of the Slimepires, I think about this and about the limitations and being creative in how you get past them with a trick it pulls I think of as the missing pig trick. The idea is you take 3 pigs and you run on their side 1, 2, and 4, and then you let them loose somewhere a pig shouldn't be. The people who have to catch the pigs are distracted by catching them, but also they'll spend time trying to find pig 3 because the numbers implied an extra pig. When you follow Return of the Slimepires to its conclusion, the game tells you, hey, congratulations, you just got ending B. Thing is, if you're like me, you look at the game and go, hang on, ending B? Where else could I go? What did I miss that means there are other ways to finish the game? And there are other ways to finish the game, but you have to think about the game's interface, the choices you have presented to you, and the tools you have to work out what is even possible in the context of the game you've been playing. It's an amazing trick because it forces you to get creative. First, you have to exhaust the options in the game, you have to work out what in the game you can interact with that can change the way the game ends. Then you have to work out methods to actually execute on those interactions. This isn't a game with a cheat code that unlocks an ending. The game doesn't have room for that in its interface. You can move, jump, and shoot. Everything you do has to be about using those commands and nothing else. What can you do in this space with the affordances the game offers you? It's a great puzzle. I'm not going to spoil you on solutions, but I will give you a hint. See, when I started this script, I described that this game makes my brain itch because of what it has to say about limitations, about creativity, and about boundaries. Deep down, Return of the Slimepires is about boundaries and what we assume we know in how we make ourselves safe within those boundaries.